Hello everyone, welcome to day number 2 of Weather Week. It's Tuesday, March 2nd. Today we're going to talk about more specific conditions that make up the weather. And that is the clouds that we see in the sky, wind, and precipitation. Precipitation meaning rain and snow and that kind of stuff. We're going to start off today with a short demonstration. This demonstration will allow us to see what happens to the air when it's heated up. And sit back and watch this, and then we'll explain it a little bit more after we see this video clip. Okay, so like I said, we're going to show how hot air rises. Now I've got a little space heater unit, and I can feel the heat right here as it goes up. And to show how the air molecules are actually going up also, I'm going to use my little bubbles. So let's see what these bubbles do here. Isn't that cool? Look at that. Do one more, because this is fun. Wow! And look at that, you can even catch them, and they make bigger ones. So, like we said, that works because this air, when it's heated up, is less dense. And the colder air is moving underneath it and pushing it up, which caused those bubbles to go up in the air. Isn't that cool? All right. That was pretty cool how those bubbles went up, wasn't it? So when the air got heated up, it becomes less dense and lighter and rises. What technically happens is that the cold air, which is more dense and heavier, pushes underneath the hot air and actually lifts it up. But all we see is like the bubbles rising and the hot air rising. So that's the way we see that. Now this next demonstration has to do with understanding that air, all of this air around us, is made up of little molecules and things that we can't see because they're so small. But it's not just invisible nothingness. It is actual stuff. And this stuff, the air, takes up space, and it has weight or mass, and therefore it has air pressure. Now this air pressure is a real important thing that we have to think about and know more about when we understand the weather. So in this demonstration, it's kind of a fun one we did up in the kitchen, that we're going to show air pressure with water and a glass. So take a look at this, and we'll get right back to understanding more about weather and how the hot air and air pressure all help us to understand what's going on with the weather around us. All right, so in order for us to understand a little bit more about the weather, we need to understand how the air around us works. All this around us is actually gas made up of tiny little molecules of mostly nitrogen with oxygen and some water vapor in it. But all of this works together in weather. Now here's a couple things we're going to take a look at so that we get a little better understanding of it. This air around us actually takes up space, and it has mass, and it has pressure. Okay, so here's the first demonstration we're going to do. Here's a nice dry paper towel. I'm going to put it inside this glass right here. And what do you think is going to happen to that paper towel when I put this glass in water? All right, well, let's find out. If you come up here with the camera for me, my trusty camera person, who is Miss Patty, I'm going to take this and push it down in there like that. Now remember my question, what do you think is going to happen to that paper towel? Let's take it out and we'll take a look. That paper towel is still nice and dry because when we put the glass down in the water, there's air inside here. That air does not allow the water to come up in there when we have the glass like this. All right, so it takes up space and it has pressure. Now, let me show you another demonstration. So if you go back up just a little bit with the camera for me, please, because this is kind of a cool one. And you'll get back closer here in just a second. What do you think is going to happen this time? I fill my glass with water, and I'm going to take this little piece of paper, put it over the top, and I'm going to turn the glass upside down. Now, if water goes all over the place, I guarantee my camera person is not going to be happy. So, I am hoping this works. So come up here a little bit closer with the camera, please. All right, now I put my hand right here on the top, and I turn the glass over. Now what happens when I take my hand away? Look at that! Wonder why that happens. It's because there is air pressure pushing up here with the same amount of pressure that's pushing down on it, so it stays right there. Now, if I allow more air to get up in here, it's going to push it all out like this. So I let a little bit of water out, and oh, it made a big splash and now a big mess. Miss Patty's not going to be happy about that, is she? All right, we have some other things we're going to talk about in a few minutes. I'll be right back. So that was kind of fun with the water and the glass. What you didn't get to see, though, was my camera person and the look on her face when the water splashed out of the glass and went kind of all over the place. But that's okay. It was fun. And it was easy to clean up because it was just water. So today we want to talk about wind and precipitation. Wind is caused by the heating of the atmosphere, causing the warmer air and the cooler air to mix together and influence each other, causing the air molecules to move. Now, we showed you just a little bit of that, but outside in the real world, all of these things are taking place on a big, huge scale. So that's why part of the weather will include the wind that might be blowing real hard. It might be a real gentle breeze, or there might not be any breeze at all at a certain time. And that's all those different weather conditions that exist because of this influence of the sun heating up our atmosphere. Now this also is part of why we want to understand about clouds, because clouds are associated with certain types of weather. So if we see certain types of clouds, we're going to have a pretty good idea of what the weather's going to be. So the first thing we want to talk about is the fact that there are different kinds of clouds. So when you go outside and you look up at the clouds, you're going to see different types of clouds on different days. And we're going to talk about 3 different types of clouds and show you some pictures of them so that when you go outside starting tomorrow or even today, you can take a look up and see what kind of clouds are out there. And sometimes there are no clouds at all. It's just a big, beautiful blue sky. And so that is a certain way to look at what the weather is going to be also if there are no clouds. So these are some different types of clouds on this picture right here. And we see these big, huge, fluffy ones. And then we have some of these little, look like little strings or hairs. And then some flat ones also. We want to talk about how these clouds form. Now you remember yesterday when I said after a rain or even after the snow, there's a puddle or water on the ground. Where does that water go? Well, we said that it evaporates. When the sun shines on it or the heat gives those water molecules in that puddle a little extra energy, they evaporate, which means they jump out of that puddle and they go up into the air. So in this picture right here, that puddle, when it gets warmed up, allows that evaporation, which is the water vapor, moving up into the air. And the humidity is what we call that. We can feel that on a real humid day when it's 90 degrees and it's real uncomfortable in the summer and it's high humidity. It makes us feel kind of uncomfortable. And in the winter, sometimes we have experienced when there's very little humidity, very little water vapor in the air, and it's kind of dry and our skin kind of gets cracked sometimes, and it's not real comfortable either. But that's all part of understanding the weather. So this is all related to how clouds form. This water vapor up in the air will continue to rise up higher and higher and higher. And the water droplets are very, very tiny. In fact, we can't even see them. Between you and me right now, there's a lot of little tiny little water droplets that are so small we can't see them. But as they move up higher and higher in the air, then it gets colder, and then they start to join back together as little tiny droplets that get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger until eventually we can see them as these little droplets that form clouds. So this water vapor going higher up into the air recondenses, which is the opposite of evaporation. They join back together into little droplets big enough to reflect light off of from the sun and for us to see. Now, this diagram shows a little bit more about what we're talking about. That warm, moist air rises and it cools and it condenses to form clouds. Now, I said there are different kinds of clouds. So when we go outside and we look and we see clouds, sometimes we see these big fluffy balls, and it's really a lot of fun sometimes when we look at the clouds like this to see if we see different things. Like does that look like a nose of a doggy over there? Is this look like some person kind of floating around? We look at these kind of clouds, cumulus clouds, and sometimes we have fun seeing shapes in them. Cumulus clouds most of the time mean it's going to be a really nice day. Now sometimes these cumulus clouds get to be even bigger and bigger and bigger, and sometimes when they get really high up in the air, that means that we might have a rainstorm or even a thunderstorm. Those are called cumulonimbus, or thunderstorm clouds. We'll probably see more of those here in springtime now as the weather gets a little bit warmer. So this morning, I was driving my car and there was a stratus cloud so low it was actually on the ground. So these stratus clouds are kind of like blankets of clouds, and they can be higher up in the air, or sometimes they might even be down at the ground level, causing fog. So our second type of cloud is a stratus cloud. And then the third type of cloud that we're going to talk about are called cirrus clouds. Cirrus. Now these are really, really high up in the air, and these are all made of ice because they are so far up in the sky. And they are being blown by the winds that are up real high and stretched out into these like hair-like structures where it looks like someone's white hair is kind of flowing. Those kind of clouds can be used to predict the weather as well, depending on what time of day and kind of the color we see of them. All right, so next, let's talk about precipitation. Precipitation is another word that means there's some sort of water falling from the sky on our head. So if we're going to talk about precipitation, we probably better be a little bit better prepared here. And so I always have my umbrella with me just to make sure that I'm going to be dry when it's raining or drizzling. But then sometimes if the air around us is colder, this isn't going to do any good because it's going to be coming down as either freezing rain or freezing drizzle or snow or sleet. Now hail is something else that's a little bit different, but it's frozen precipitation also, and we can talk about that a little bit later in the week. How does the rain form? Well, we start with that puddle on the ground or a body of water like a pond or a lake or the oceans also. The sun shining on that water, again, heats it up like we talked about. It evaporates, and that water moisture or the humidity goes up into the air. As it gets higher and higher and higher, where it gets colder, it condenses to form clouds. And then, if it is heavy enough and there's enough moisture, it will fall back to the ground as precipitation. Now, if this temperature right here is really, really cold, it might fall as snow or sleet. But if it's a warmer day and it's above freezing, which means that's that point at which water freezes, it could fall as snow, like we said, or if it's warmer, it'll fall as rain. And then it starts all over again, because then that puddle or that pond is right here, that the water starts to evaporate, and it keeps going in this cycle. So one of the things we want to talk about today is understanding that different types of clouds are associated with different types of weather, usually. So there are some times when, it may not be an exact correlation between a certain type of cloud and a certain type of weather pattern. But for the most part, we're going to see very similar things from one day to the next, depending on the type of clouds and the temperature that surrounds us. And so that's how we can predict the weather. Now it's your turn. So either later today or tomorrow or sometime, I want you, when you go outside, or maybe you're by the window or something, I want you to look up and see what kind of clouds you see. And let's see if you can identify them as either being a cumulus, a stratus, or a cirrus cloud. Now you might have to get some more pictures, and Annie and some of your other helpers can maybe find some pictures of the clouds with their names on it and help you to identify them. But what I want you to do with that information is I want you to think about what the weather is going to be like today. When I see this kind of cloud and I know what kind of temperature it is, it's cold or it's getting warmer, what's that weather going to be like? And is it going to rain or snow today? Or maybe neither. So that's all I have for you for today. I hope you have a great day, and remember, always look up, because that's going to help us not just to know what the weather is, but it's going to help us to feel better too. Have a great day, everyone.